Hello, back again. I hope you had an amazing time. Once again, please do a big shout out to all our speakers today in the chat section. For this day, the last session will be the cherry on the cake. I'm passing the mic to one and only Eric Nantz, who is going to host the panel discussion in life science track with amazing guests. Thank you so much for today, and I'm looking forward for this insightful discussion. The stage is yours, Eric.
Wow, thank you so much. And I've been attending this since the very beginning when Absalon started this conference. And every time I try to prepare myself, there's going to be a lot of amazing stuff. But even I'm still blown away of all the amazing stuff we've seen today and the day before in the workshops as well. So it is truly an honor and a privilege to be able to close out the life sciences track as a style that I definitely feel comfortable with, is sharing the spotlight with some amazing practitioners and data scientists in the pharma industry to join me to talk about all things shiny that we've experienced in life sciences, where we're at, where we think the future is going, some of the challenges we encounter along the way, and of course, looking for any questions from you in the audience. So if you definitely saw that chat message, we can send them in the chat here, or you can send it on the Slido link as well, taking a page out of the Data Science Hangout group that I like to be a part of there as well. So without further ado, let's bring in our esteemed panel here. I'm going to first welcome right back to the stage after all of 1 minute of being off the stage. Becca Krouse is joining us. As you heard, she is a data science leader at GSK. I've had the pleasure of talking with her at many of the previous conferences, and you always teach me something new every time I talk with you. So I'm happy to have you on board with this. And then also want to welcome back Dony Unardi, who you heard his excellent talk with teal and the history of teal and where it's going in the future. Certainly one of the projects I've admired greatly, easily one of the most complex yet innovative pieces of the use of Shiny in life sciences. So I'm really happy to have you on board. And last but certainly not least, Harvey Lieberman, who if you ever been a part of our pharma, Harvey very well. He is one of the biggest engines of why the our pharma conference goes, but he is currently an associate director in early development analytics and research statistics at Novartis. And yeah, from time to time, you'll hear me and Harvey reminisce on the good old days of tech and all of our vintage hardware processing that we've used in the past. So I am thrilled to have each of you join me for this panel. And I think I'll lead off with, just after all the amazing stuff you've heard today and the day prior, what is like one thing that you say to yourself, you know what, that is amazing stuff. I'm going to take that and I'm going to work that in a new project. I don't know who wants to take that first.
I can go. Sure. I think, thank you, first of all, Eric and the organizers for having me. And I'll say that thoughts and opinions are my own. But I know there's been so much mention of WebR and using R in this, or using Shiny in this new way. And I think that that's a game changer that brings it to so many more people with, limited resources. It just makes the ability to share apps so much easier. So that's really cool.
Awesome. And Dony, how about you?
Yeah, today I was watching the TDD, test-driven development approach. I think that's something new as well, not new, but I just haven't applied yet, but I heard about it, read about it. So I thought it was really interesting to see hands-on example like that. So yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
Awesome. And Harvey, what do you think?
For me, definitely Shiny Live. I've played around with it a little. There are lots of colleagues I'm working with from a training perspective, and I'm really excited now to just sit down and throw something together where we can work through live examples. I've started to use BS Lib a little bit, and from Garrick's talk, I'm just inspired to use it more and more now. So there's just been a lot of great content.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Each of those areas I'm very interested in pursuing more. And there were, in some of the talks we've seen today, we've seen terrific examples of apps that when you see them on the screen, unless you literally knew that the talk was about, or the example was a Shiny Build app, you wouldn't know it was a Shiny app by the way it was aesthetically created. And like you said, Harvey, with BS Lib, with some of these other amazing packages that we've had for years now, I think the present time, as opposed to say the early days of Shiny development, you can make not just a powerful engine with analytics behind the scenes, you can make something that will stand shoulder to shoulder with anything that you would pay, a lot of money for a specific, say, IT dev workshop, vendor to create, but with the power of Orange Shiny at the back of it. So every time I think I know enough about BS Web, there's always something else that changes the game to me. So yesterday definitely saw some of those moments. But yeah, I think there's a thread there I want to kind of start off with here is that, yeah, Shiny's been around quite a while. We've heard those amazing keynotes that talk about the history of Shiny and where it's going in the future in terms of, future development. In your respective organizations, where do you think the next major, say, maybe mountain to climb, or maybe part of like the drug development process that you think Shiny is right there, but maybe as an untapped resource that you think can help streamline analytics, maybe streamline collaboration? Is there like a low-hanging fruit that you see now, given how far the ecosystem has gone, of where you think Shiny can help in the drug development process?
Yeah, I can take this one. So for us, it's been quite a journey for the past several years already. To start with an idea of, we have this SaaS server, then we have the R server, and then even back then I was still doing, I was study data manager. I was doing CRF, and my goal was to clean data, and I thought, all right, let's just use Shiny to see the quality of my data. So since then, it's been a great movement. I think we start seeing more and more use cases of where Shiny can help. I'm not specifically talking about Teal, but this is just people writing Shiny apps to do more efficiency in their exploratory work, or even for data cleaning or data quality. And what I see moving forward is that there are definitely spaces for this. Not only it's the demand is definitely there. Internally, we want to kind of push this into the study team and makes this part of the study workflow. But you're right, there is the mountain to climb. Again, the idea is to make this scalable, not one person or two developers whipping it out for the rest of the studies. I think that's part of the journey as well, which is why the sense of community is very, very important, and not just internally, but externally as well. We can help each other a lot by accelerating this learning experience, user guidance, and really is the goal is being able to accelerate and generate these data insights, in our respective companies. And I'm very excited about this, and I see that a lot of companies actually on the same page with us, with what we're thinking, and just so great to see these names coming up. And I think I met you, Eric, probably last year, right? The first time I heard your name, I probably just met you on Fuse. So that was very encouraging, just to have a great communities backup on this open source technology. So yeah, I really have a high hope. I really look forward to see how Shiny can be part of, for now, exploratory workflow internally, and maybe hopefully soon, after we see what we can achieve with the pilot 4 here, the one that if you see the presentation today, really looking for how that turns out. But really great for industry, and it's also good for job. Like, I think more and more Shiny developers start to job posting stuff to appear, and I think it's just a great I think we're on a great track on the choice of a tool that we want to do this with. So yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely not a niche anymore, right? I mean, this is becoming, maybe mainstream's too strong of a word, but this is definitely a core capability now that it's not ignored anymore. It is everywhere in terms of some part of an organization is leveraging it. It's just a matter of, bringing it into these other opportunities. And certainly, Becca, we heard from your experiences of building the T format builder and everything like that. Is that an area you're still pursuing heavily, or are there other areas that you and your colleagues at GSK are pursuing the use of Shiny in new settings?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a area of potential, right? The T format builder, and doing more of this metadata driven tabling with T format. So with like something I don't think I mentioned in my talk about T format builder that Shiny is useful for is it's a learning tool. So we could have, so if we take T format as an example, it can be a little bit, the learning curve, it takes time, right, to really get to know a package. And so Shiny as an interface can be a nice entry tool for people to kind of build their expertise as well. So that's an area that I didn't mention, but I think is important. But generally on pipelines and workflows, yeah, the tabling, and I agree with Dony, the exploratory data analysis always just prime for using Shiny. Just exploring the data and looking at it in different ways. I think that's a great area of potential. So I guess it kind of hits every point, right? The exploratory and then working on the actual production displays.
Awesome. And Harvey, you've given me small glimpses of the directions you've pushed Shiny lately, but what are some of the areas that you're kind of pursuing now that you think are untapped potential here?
Yeah. Well, there's one area that I've always been drawn towards, and I'm seeing more and more internally, more people move towards this concept, which is the idea of framework approaches. So, in a similar way to something like TIL and T format, the idea of having a construct where someone who's not familiar with Shiny and maybe someone who's not familiar with R can come in and create something that's truly amazing and truly extraordinary, and maybe not even realize what they're doing or what's happening behind the scenes. And a lot of this can be accomplished with Shiny, and especially with some things, for example, the Shiny modules that we're all familiar and happy with. And these kinds of approaches will put us in a position where we can separate the data from the metadata from the Shiny app, and essentially have, in a way, an app that can build other apps, or something that can create other things. And as the four of us know, and I'm sure many people on listening, we work in a regulated environment, and we have to go through sometimes extensive validation of what we create. If we can create something that's completely reusable, then we're moving a step towards making our lives much easier and the lives for everyone else. So I see that as a big move, and we've started to make big moves in that kind of direction.
Yeah, it's there's always been situations, especially in the early days, where there may be a handful of those that are early adopters, and then they're starting building something that, starts in the prototyping stage, and suddenly, more than a handful of people want to use it. Hence, I better think about things like version control, or things like modular development, things like, better testing, everything like that. Sometimes you learn it the hard way, but I do feel like with this emphasis on not only building the capabilities that do these very transformative workflows, whether it's in automation or analytics. I personally have had more than many hours interfacing Shiny with HPC, which if I shared all the stories on that, we'd be here all night. But my point is that there are so many directions to take with it, but being able to empower others to kind of join in on that journey, maybe kind of ease their way into it, take the bits and pieces they need for their given study, their given analysis, but then having that kind of blueprint to draw from, that seems like the next evolution of things, especially when we get to this beginning, going from like a simple-ish app to something that is going to be routinely applied to studies and in any indication, frankly. So I hope that there are ways that we can continue spreading the message of, with a little bit of best practices and setting up this foundation, the time we will save of others having to reinvent in creating that same kind of app for a new study and a new study, and end up having like these very similar functionalities, but yet they do something a little different when they didn't have to be. They could all be starting from that same code base. It's not like we have it all completely figured out yet, but I feel like the message that I'm hearing from each of you is that we're on the way there. Maybe it's just a case of spreading this more, and at least in the case of what's happening with Teal and T format builder, being able to have that shared in the open so that we all can network together and figure out ways to make that even easier from a developer perspective, as well as the end user that wants to get involved, but they're almost too scared to start, knowing how complex these things can be. So I do think that's going to be something we have to keep navigating down the road. And yeah, speaking of challenges, I'll start looking at the Slido chat here for some of our questions here. But at a kind of, I guess, at a higher level, what have you done, or in your respective projects or situations, maybe you have a stakeholder that is a bit skeptical about what Shiny could bring in that particular analysis or that particular project. What kind of techniques or tools have you used to help convince them that the adoption is worth it, as opposed to some of the things I was saying in some of the chat earlier? There's always that choice of taking the off-the-shelf stuff like Tableau or Power BI. What are some things that you've used to say, you know what? Hey, if we think about this or this, maybe Shiny's a better bet here. Kind of curious of your all thoughts on that.
I can jump in here. So I got two responses to this. One good, one bad. I'll start with the bad one, which is I've heard several people in senior management from multiple companies say, not interested, we're not a software development company. And they see Shiny, because of how it looks, because of what it can deliver, as, well, we're stats, we're statistics, we're used to doing long scripts that will be used once, and many of them generated by other people, and we're not a software development company. And my a candid response to that, which I would always say under my breath, is, well, we should be, because that's the future of everyone. You can't really deny it, and we're starting to make roads with some modern software development approaches to projects that we do, but not the entire pipeline yet, because it's just too big and massive and cumbersome. What I would say is, from the convincing part that does work, is I've had several situations and opportunities through my career of being able to sit down with someone who has had a piece of work that's taken a long period of time to do, and show them what I can do with a Shiny app, and show them how it can be streamlined in such a way that it saves time. And the couple of examples I've got off the top of my head, there was one thing I've done in a previous position where we worked with LC mass spectrometry data, and we generate thousands of data, thousands of samples of data, and it was then analyzed, and the software that was being used, they could do part of the analysis in the proprietary software, but not all of the analysis. So I put together a Shiny app that was mostly automated. You still needed one part for someone to come in and do something, and it took about 2 hours to completely process this data set, previously took 3 weeks of human interaction to do. When you can show that, everyone's jaw hits the floor, and you've got the attention of everyone in the room if you can do that. And as we know from Shiny, it doesn't take long to get from nothing to something that shows what you can do. So that's my little bit.
Yeah, for the value in that kind of time savings. Yeah, sometimes that speaks the most to people. And I remember a project where we would run these analyses on everybody's laptops. That's a lot of run overnight and maybe 2 nights because it was crunching a boatload of simulations. And then when I hit that the magical nugget of how to tie Shiny with, in this case, SunGrid Engine for our HPC backend, and it actually communicated back and forth. I knew in real time the job process and then bring it all back. That went to an hour. Like that stuff. It's amazing how much impact that can have. Sometimes you just got to roll up your sleeves and do it instead of, going for the hypotheticals. You got to show tangibly what that can bring to the table. So I definitely resonate, especially from my earlier biomarker analysis days. Yeah, Shiny was a huge friend in those situations. But yeah, Dony, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Harvey said. I mean, in terms of flexibility, speed, and on how to troubleshoot this, if we ever get into troubleshoot, it's just tremendously a lot faster. And the fact that the code is just out there, we can see it right away, and everybody can be sort of called the judge of it, which one is the right way, and which is why, again, that this community is important. I think for us, the challenge, of course, is upskilling. That's the same story with the rest of the company. But I think what motivates us more internally was because we allow our workflow to be part of the study workflow, so they can choose if they want to do the SAS workflow or the ARC workflow. And when they do pick our workflow, we gave them a suite of tools ready for them to try and productionize this, so they don't have to shop around, they don't have to look around which one's the best solution. We'll do that for them. We'll do the heavy lifting in the beginning, and then we'll provide them with the solution, what they can try. I think that's also can motivate or can help to the challenge of the to the upskilling, or this nervousness whether or not Shiny is the right way or not. So it's just to add more what Harvey just said. That's what I felt that I see internally.
Yeah, excellent. And Becca, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, it's just, I mean, I agree with everything. I think those are really great thoughts, but I was thinking also about, if you're trying to introduce Shiny and you have some existing internal tooling or and like enterprise software that people are already using, then you have to think about like what value does Shiny add that doesn't already exist. And there's of course the statistical functionality in R that it can expose that may not be available in other software. So kind of just thinking about like where it makes sense to use Shiny as well. If there's multiple options available to you, there could be places where it just makes a lot of sense and you can get a lot of value that's not available in other options that exist. But yeah, and I think like if you don't have a lot of resources or expertise, starting small, and I think that's where it's really nice that these open source solutions exist that you can just pull and use right away. You don't have to build something custom. So looking for the lower hanging fruit, if you will, to get started and just kind of introduce it and show people what's possible.
Yeah, excellent. And one thing I've also seen a trend, especially in the last few years, and certainly for myself, but I'd imagine others here too, is that I've always had the somewhat, joking line, but not really joking. It's never just Shiny, right? We are interfacing this with multiple technologies at the forefront. Obviously, the rage that the hype today about WebR is definitely real. I think that is a next major frontier in what we're all developing here. I think close alongside that, of course, especially in the spirit of AI and ML and large language models, is the use of these, much more heavy demand compute resources, where Shiny is more of a front end to these platforms. But I guess my next question to you is, in these emerging technologies, what are some of the additional challenges that we should be concerned about as we start, incorporating Shiny with these more complicated architectures, complicated, backends, and also effective use of large language models to either help us as developers create these apps more efficiently, or to help the end user with some more complicated queries? What are some of the things you're thinking about in those spaces?
Well, there's one that I know we pay attention to this, and I think everybody pay attention to this as well if you're ever in the industry, which is the protection of our patient data. As we, Shiny is an open source solutions, and it's our job to make sure that there's security measures in place when we do write this framework, write this solution to service Shiny in clinical trial setting and biotech settings, because it really is important. We want to make sure that data doesn't leak easily or not at all, but it's our responsibility to make sure the reliability of our solution doesn't affect any critical side effects, especially with patients' data. And I'm sure there's other categories as well, but this is the one that I feel like close to heart.
Excellent. I totally agree, Dony, on that front. We have to be very cognizant of how we are, keeping the confidentiality, keeping the protections going, while at the same time still, within the best of our ability, not limiting ourselves when a technology can, definitely help us in those spaces too. Yep. But Harvey or Becca, or Harvey, you got some thoughts too?
I completely agree. And the other thing I'd say is that, obviously, with any emerging technology that everyone's so excited about, especially something like AI, where there's the danger of hallucinations, that's the danger of moving too quickly and generating something that or creating something that damages because it's incorrect or because it does something wrong. So we just have to be, in my mind, cognizant of we can move in lots of different directions really quickly with this. We just have to slow down a little bit. And I've seen, within our company, there's a lot of excitement about possibilities, but we have guardrails in place to make sure we're not all running in different directions.
Yeah, the excitement is real across many of these sectors, but there are such things as having, some sanity checks beforehand before we dive too deep further, for sure. Yep. But Becca, any thoughts on this as well?
I mean, I'll just add that you can put in guardrails. That makes a lot of sense, and then also just managing the user expectations and saying what this app is for, and take the results and handle them carefully. Or, the same is true for just broad use of Shiny. If you're doing some analysis, you may have some disclaimer on it or something that's like, you need to validate this outside of Shiny, whatever. So that applies here, is just managing users' expectations about what this app does, and what you can infer from the results. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that space goes in the near future.
It's definitely fast moving, for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely sitting at the edge of my seat waiting for that pilot to see how that looks like. I like to see the engine, the one that's being proposed, and but yeah, it's the department approach as well. I think that's going to be interesting to see how the FDA takes this.
Yeah. Well, boy, there's so much more I want to share on this, because I think there are aspects of it that I hope become more modern in the long run. But at the same time, one of the things that these pilots have illuminated to me is that we can't have everything the way we want in terms of, us on the development side, maybe we take for granted the fact that we have a central place to deploy apps. We have a central place to host our code, to share our code. At our colleagues at the FDA is not so much. It's running on laptops, for better or worse, and they've been very transparent about it. But at the same time, what we can do to make that experience, until more modern, tooling or hosting is available to them, and I know they're working on it, but as you can imagine, anything is pretty slow moving in the regulatory space. But that's what I'm excited about this pilot, is that within those confines, to make the experience much more smoother for them. And not that pilot 2 was that hard per se. I mean, I spent a lot of time in that ADRG to get the instructions right, but at the same time, we can greatly simplify it, as we heard earlier this morning, with these technologies. And my hope is that has, tails or impact on the rest of submission processes. Yeah, these are self-contained in a sense right now, but hey, if that concept works here, what's stopping us from doing this in the bigger spectrum of submissions, and more importantly, the reproducibility in general, no matter which phase of the submission process we're in. So I'm just as excited you are. I am nervous too, because this is arguably the most technology pushing effort that I've ever had with our regulators. But I think we're on to something. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, it's amazing how the time flies by here. I think we'll leave off with I'm going to surface something else in on the chat here. We have someone that asked, that their background is in biology or cancer biology. They developed a few, say, medium-ish Shiny apps, and then others are looking at them as a really top-notch Shiny developer. But how do you balance being able to do the day-to-day and trying to upskill yourself further as you start to learn about these new trends in Shiny? What are some of the things you all have done to kind of balance your day-to-day work, but keeping up with what the rest of the community is doing in this space? Don't be shy.
I can jump in. So for me, it was identifying things that Shiny can provide a solution for, and using that as a way to upskill myself. So like many people, something like Shiny is something that I learned on the job. I learned by doing, and by doing more, I got better. So by identifying those issues, and the one I spoke about before, the huge time-saving one, yeah, people were, wow, this is amazing, you need to do more of this. Well, there's still a balance with other things, but that was where I really started to cut my teeth a lot on this.
Excellent. Yeah, learning by doing. Yeah, that's my motto. Even in my case of kind of venturing in other parts of my hobbies and seeing what Shiny can do for that. Making a silly little hotshot racing dashboard for a Shiny contest years ago. I wait a minute, Reactable could be used for my actual daily work, kind of thing. That stuff gets me jazzed every time. Yeah, Donnie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think as an advice, I felt like nobody should think that they need to become a Shiny developer to write Shiny app. You can always do use case by use case. I mean, if I show you what I wrote, 3 or 4 years ago, I mean, I will be embarrassed. But you grew with it, right? And if you don't need Shiny module, don't write Shiny module. If you don't need object oriented, just write functional programming. It's fine. I mean, as long as it works, as long as it fulfills the purpose of what you're trying to find with your Shiny app, that's enough. And then as you go through this conference like this, like ShinyCon, like Fuse, you'll see more and more use cases that may pique your interest, because the important thing is the motivation. If you have motivation and you have a use case to fulfill, that's when you're gonna, and you do it, that's when you learn. So I guess my advice is don't feel like you need to be a top-notch developer or have to learn JavaScript or whatever. If you do need to learn, just learn enough, in my opinion. Just learn enough to finish it, and then you can grow from there. That would be my take on this.
Yeah, it's sometimes easy to fall in the trap of, oh, this isn't right. I got to keep getting this close to perfect. No, sometimes you learn by doing, but also embracing the fact that you have an opportunity to grow and to really embrace that. Don't try to be perfect every time.
It's the small win, Eric. It's that small win
Yes,
is the one that keeps you going.
exactly. And Becca, how about you?
Yeah, I love that. Just starting simple, because something like Shiny can always get more and more and more complex and more advanced. So starting simple and just seeing ways to incorporate it in your day to day. I agree. That's kind of the best way, and just learning by doing and little use cases. And I think at first, anything that you're learning for the first time does feel like extra effort, and it does feel like an investment of time. But as Harvey said, it just kind of gets easier and easier, where things get quicker. Now there's so many frameworks that get you up and running quickly, that you can just like pop a UI really fast, and you don't have to spend so much time up front. So there's tools to help as well, just like making really quick solutions. But yeah, I mean, there's an initial investment, of course, like anything, but yeah, keeping it simple and building up from there.
That is a perfect way to end this, right? Where you got to start somewhere, but to embrace the fact that as you learn, it's a journey. It's not a sprint. Nobody wants to see my first shiny up. No way. No, you're all not going to see that. So anyway, but with that said, the time has flown by as I knew it would. I cannot thank each of you enough, Becca, Harvey, and Dony, for joining me on this panel to close out what was an amazing, highly inspiring life sciences track and the overall conference. So I guess I will be bidding adieu for now, but in about a few minutes, we'll have the rest of our Epsilon folks come out to close out the conference. But thank you again. And yeah, until next time or next year, wherever it will be. Yeah, happy to chat again. And thank you again.